Do you know why babies are so cute and we say they have such big eyes? It's because the eye, when the baby is born, has reached almost the final stage of maturity. So it has reached almost the final size that it will reach in adult life. However, the baby, of course, is small, so it looks like they have very big eyes. So let's talk about the eye today. The eye is an extremely complex organ, one of the most complex and fascinating. Even Darwin was shocked at the complexity of the eye. We can define the eye in very technical terms as an optical, mechanical, electrochemical sensor. So to understand what I just said, let's follow together how the light enters the eye. Before even the light enters the eye, we have a first barrier, which is the eyelids. The eyelids lubricate and keep clean the surface of the eye something like 12 times per minute. And then we have two regulators that control the light that comes in. One is the pupil that can be either small or big depending on light conditions. For example, when you are in a very dark place and you want to see, it will be maximum open so to let as much light come in. Or when you go to the eye doctor and the eye doctor puts those horrible drops in it because he wants to see the inside of the eye, he will dilate the pupil. On the contrary, when you are in a very sunny place, the pupil will be very small because you don't want to have too much light entering the eye and doing damage. The second regulator is the lens. The lens is fascinating because it's a lens with variable geometry, meaning the lens is attached with ciliary muscles that either make it more round or more elongated depending on what you want to focus on. And by basically changing the geometry, it will project on the retina the image of what you want to see, either something that is close or something that is far away. And this is the opposite of what we know from all our cameras and phones. When you have a camera and you want to focus on something, you move the distance of the lens from the camera itself. But the lens doesn't change shape, it's a fixed shape. Sometimes you put the zoom or a grand angle and you just change the distance from the camera. In the eye, the camera is always at the same place, it's fixed there, attached by the ciliary muscles. What changes is the shape. And how it change shape? It's controlled by our supercomputer, the brain. The brain decides how much to elongate or not the lens depending on what you want to see. So now you have the light photons that enter the eye have passed the pupil, have passed the lens, and now there is kind of a jelly there that is totally transparent. It gives structural integrity to the eye, but at the same time allows the light to project on the retina. The retina is an extremely complex structure. It has two types of cells, cones and rods. The cones allow to see in broad daylight and allow to see colors. There are something like 4.5 million cones, and we can distinguish up to 10 million colors. Pretty impressive. We have the rods that are more to see in the dark. They're black and white, and there are some 91 million of those rods. So the light excites those cells, cones and rods on the retina, transforms from there, sends an electrochemical message through the optic nerve to the brain, and that's how we see. In fact, the eye can see something like estimated 50 images per second and rebuilds the image from there in our brain. Now, there are a couple of points that are fascinating. First of all, there's a point on the retina that is called the fovea, which is an extremely high resolution. It has a very high density of cones and rods, and that point is the point where when we want to see something very precisely, we try to focus on that point. Second is there is a point where the optic nerve connects to the eye, and that point is a point where we cannot see anything. So really, when we look, we should see a dark spot on our images, but we don't. Why we don't? Because the brain, our supercomputer, compensates for it by recomposing all the images and then covering it up by the superposition of all the images that we have. Now, what kind of resolution do we get? Think about the latest iPhone, the iPhone 13. Apparently, it has a resolution of 12 megapixels. You know what's the resolution of our eye? It is estimated to be 576 megapixels. On top of that, research has been made to show that the amount of information that goes through the optic nerve is optimized to be the minimum amount of information needed to reconstruct a high-definition image, which is absolutely fascinating. So we saw the optical part, the electrochemical part. We didn't talk about the mechanical part. The eyes, each eye has 6 muscles that are controlled by the 6 nerves. So there are 12 muscles in total when you count the 2 eyes. And those muscles are the ones that permit us to see up, down, left, right. And they should be totally synchronized, so that, because if they're not synchronized, we have trouble with the vision, like double vision, diplopia, or strabismus, or other different problems. Now, a question you may ask is, why we have two eyes? Maybe one is spare? No, it's the same thing as with ears. With ears, with the two ears, you can have a stereo effect, so you can know from where the sound comes. And when you have two eyes, you can have a perception of depth. In fact, driving a car with only one eye would be very problematic, because we would not have this distance. Now, so we had the optical part, the mechanical part, the electrochemical part, and this electrochemical signal goes through the optic nerve to the brain, and the brain decodes it. It's very interesting when you look at the cross-section of the optic nerve. It looks somehow like an ayin. Ayin in Hebrew, the letter ayin, also the word ayin means eyes. So we have the optic nerve that are in the shape of an ayin, and it means also eye. The last part, I want to show you how really we don't see with our eyes, we see with our brains. And look at this image. When you look at this image, what do you see? Well, you see a couple of people there, and there's a tree, and there's a lake. But if I told you that there was a baby in there, could you see the baby? Now I'm going to show you the baby. Once you see the baby, you'll see the baby all the time. In fact, those of you who knew about this optical illusion saw the baby initially because they already saw it before. So it shows how the brain decodes. I'll give you another example that is absolutely fascinating. A research was done where they took a group of volunteers and they put them glasses that made the images upside down. So imagine you had the heads at the bottom, the feet at the top. So when people put those glasses, they were totally confused. And when they walked, they were bumping all over the place. It was very, very perturbing. However, after a few hours or a few days, they got used to it. So they wore those glasses 24/7, and then they could continue normal life with those glasses. So that means the brain got used that the images upside down should have been interpreted in a different way and reversed the images. What is even more fascinating is after, let's say, a week, they took off those glasses. And those people were totally confused, and they started bumping again left and right because they were used to see upside down. The fact that the brain is so involved in the vision is a recent scientific discovery. But our rabbis knew already from a long time. When you look at the Talmud, at the Gemara, in the volume of Avodah Zarah on page 28b, it talks about a lady who had an eye problem on Shabbat. And in fact, it ended up very badly. And Mar Shmuel said, Liba Talu, that the vision is connected to the Liba. Liba, Lev, in Hebrew means the heart. But Rav Victor Miller Zatzal said, every time you have Lev in our writings, it really means the mind, the brain. And in fact, when you look on Jewish law, in Halacha, you see that it takes very, very seriously pains in the eyes, because it knows that it's connected to the brain. So we saw how amazing and complex this system of optomechanical, electrochemical, with the super controlled by supercomputer, which is our brain. So now when you are gonna look at something, you're gonna think, wow, look at this. It's adjusting those 12 muscles and the ciliary muscles, and controlling the pupil, and it's controlling the eyelids and everything else, and everything works so nicely so that we can enjoy the scenery. Thank you.